So welcome to Satsang. Namaste.
Namaste.
So you become so still that you can't even find yourself. It's like you dissolve into the atmosphere. And then your mind stops. And then not even time exists. Right? Because time only exists because you have a thought, and then another thought, and then another thought. There was a great yogi who once closed his eyes into meditation, and the moment that he opened his eyes, like 2 minutes later, 14 days had passed. And people had surrounded him and covered him with flowers. So, because he literally thought that only 2 minutes had passed. You can sit up closer if you like. It'd be awesome, like maybe right here or something. I like that. He's comes right up. It's beautiful. I love it. Because what I'm used to is kind of like a semicircle. You know, where kind of everyone's kind of surrounded around, and it's like a little campfire. You know, just like this is our campfire. So warm. So yes, when the mind becomes still, then time no longer exists for you. Location no longer exists for you. You can't find where you are. You're not on some planet, or you're not in a body. You're not a human. You're gone, and that is Samadhi, which is the final stage of yoga, according to Patanjali, the 8th. The final stage of yoga, where you're unified with the whole, when you've lost yourself. And we could call it the cosmic being. And that's what we're here to do. Did you know that? I forgot even what it said on the invitation. I was asking her, like, I'm not sure what the subject is tonight. I'm not quite sure. But, and I still haven't even looked at the invitation. But I kind of go with what I'm feeling. And so when you come to a gathering like this, it kind of like starts to soften your being, soften your mind, soften your emotions. And then you dissolve. And that's a really, really good thing. Maybe not to a normal person who doesn't like that idea, because, we generally want to keep our personalities. We want to keep our identity. Everyone wants to the whole world is like that, right? Even spiritual people want to be seen as spiritual. Look at me, I'm a great meditator. Oh, I'm a kirtan artist. Oh, I'm very much a yogi. Look at me, right? And that is a spiritual ego too. Right? And so then my question is really, who are you? There's a really fascinating story about this topic. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah.
Oh, one of my favorite stories of all time. Does anyone know King Janak? Anyone heard of King Janak? Okay. King Janak was a great enlightened king who lived long, long ago in India. It's kind of rare to find a fairly illumined king, right? Because they're so busy doing things, you'd expect them to be more like greedy-oriented. Hi. So, so King Janak lived in a palace, and one day he fell asleep on his golden bed. And he had a dream. And what did he dream about? he dreamed that he was a poor man, starving, had nothing to eat, and so he was knocking from door to door in the kingdom, asking for food. Please give me something. In Sanskrit, that was Bhiksham Dehi, please give me something. So now you know, if you ever become a beggar in India, you just have to use those words and go up to the person's door and they'll understand what you're saying. Say, Bhiksham Dehi. Like, oh, I'll give you something. You have to really look like you need it, though. You can't dress up with nice clothes and that. They'll throw you out. So, and by the way, I was a wandering, I would say a beggar, but kind of, through India, where I went for 4 months through India and I was journeying. And I joined the sadhus. Sadhus are the spiritual seekers. They're usually dressed in orange. I have to be wearing orange, which is orange is a symbol of renunciation. It's like the monk. So I joined them in a place called Haridwar, kind of like north central India. Haridwar is a very famous town. I saw all these wandering monks, and they were going in a line. I said, I wonder what they're doing. So, I got in line with them. I had no idea where I was going, so I followed all the monks through this. And then suddenly we stop at this ashram, and then we all sit down, and I sit down with them, right? Mind you, like I'm a guy from the U.S. and they're all from India, and they're legitimate. Me, So we all sat down, and then they began to serve food. I was like, wow, this is like I was part of their group. So I get all this like nice food, and I'm eating, and then we all get up at the same time, and then I follow them, and we go to the next ashram. Like, oh wow, this is something. These sadhus are well fed. So I get to the next one, I sit down. And we all get together, and they all start serving food, and lovely Indian food. So I must have stopped at like 4 different stops. They even wanted to give me money. Because the sadhus, they give you like 10 or 20 rupees. 10 rupees would be equivalent to less than 10 cents in our society. And so each one would, and I, as I was in line, I was very embarrassed. I said, I don't need 10 rupees. So I refused it. And they felt, well, we're supposed to give you some money. I said, no, actually I haven't. I'm just joining temporarily. So, and then I made friends with the sadhu, one of the sadhus, and he gave me kind of some orange clothes to wear as a hat and stuff. And I really felt like I was blending in, It was really fun. So that was my adventure, and I was 4 months like that as a wandering sadhu, going from place to place on this pilgrimage to see all the holy places. Anyway, go back to King Janak's story. So then he's starving, and then he knocks at one door, and they mercifully decide to give him some food. He says, oh, thank you. Get a little bit of food and water, and he takes it, and he goes into the forest, and he begins to cook the food. And then all of a sudden the wild beast comes and snatches the food away. And now it's gone. And he's trembling in hunger. I mean, literally dying. And then, as he's crying and weeping, he wakes up. And where is he? On his golden bed in the palace. And then he has this question come to mind. Who am I? Right? Who am I? Am I the poor man who was starving and dying in the forest? Or am I this king lying on this golden bed? Both are equally real. Right? Who am I? Don't you think that's a fair question? If they're both equally real, then you could be either one. So then he decided, I'm going to invite all the wise men, or all the wise people of the kingdom, to come to my courtyard so I can ask them this question of what is truth? Who am I? So then, then he said, and this is the one very key thing. I will give that person who answers my question right, or according to my satisfaction, half of my kingdom. So, of course, he attracted lots of wise men to his courtyard. And they all came, gathered together. And as they all settled in the courtyard, he went one by one and asked them the question, what is truth? Who am I? And he was dissatisfied with all the answers. And then after everyone had answered, suddenly in walks this man who was deformed by 8 times. I don't know if you look quite like that. I just kind of tried to give you a visual. So then, and he cuts through the crowd, and he sits on the throne that was meant for the person to answer the question correctly, right? The one that was supposed to be for the person who got the question right. And then everyone saw his deformations, and they started laughing. How can this man possibly know the answer to this question? They're laughing. And when the laughter died down, he spoke to the group and he said, I thought I was in the company of wise men, but I realize now I'm in the company of chamar, which in Sanskrit means leatherman, one who works with leather, one who only sees skin deep. And of course they were shocked into silence. And then he looks at the king and he says, the river may be crooked, but the water is never crooked. And King Janak was stunned. And then he said, this is not an ordinary man. So then the prime minister was going to ask him the question, what is truth or what is reality? And then his name is Ashtavakra, by the way, this man who was deformed by 8 times. Ashta means 8, Vakra means bent, 8 deformations. So he says, no, King Janak, you ask me the question. He's pretty tough. He's talking to a king, right? So then King Janak says, okay, so I'll give you half my kingdom if you answer this question, what is truth? Who am I? And Ashtavakra says, well, how can you give me half your kingdom? Do you own this kingdom? Is this kingdom yours? He says, of course it's mine. I own it. I'm the king. I'm the bona fide king. It's mine. He said, well, did you own this kingdom 100 years ago? Will you own it 100 years from now? So if you didn't own it 100 years ago, let's say your grandpa owned it, and your son will own it 100 years from now, how can you be the owner of this kingdom, this land? Do you really own it? And he realized, oh my God, this kingdom's not mine. So I can't even give you my half of my kingdom because it's not even mine to give. So he says, okay, well then I'll give you my body. Well, king, is this body you? Is it yours? Did you have this body 100 years ago? And will you have it 100 years from now? And if you didn't own it back then, and you won't own it 100 years from now, how could this be yours? Because if you own something, you own it. It's always yours. Instead, it seems to be a passing phenomenon, right? This body kind of like lightning. It just appears and then it's gone. So you can't own it. It's not yours. So he said, well, I'll give you my mind. He said, well, how can this mind, and you have to really look at yourself too, right? How can this mind be yours? If you tell the mind to be quiet, will it be quiet? Right now, go ahead, try it. Say, okay, mind, just be totally silent right now. I need to relax. Is anyone's mind going silent? It's still thinking. Therefore, since it won't do what you say, how can it be yours? If it's yours, you own it. You can tell it what to do. But the mind is going to do what it's going to do, no matter what you say. So the mind cannot be yours and is not you. It's also a temporary phenomenon that keeps changing. You can't control it, maybe to some degree, but really you can't. It's going to keep thinking. So then, now King Janak's really puzzled. And he realized who this is, the master. And so he prostrates before Ashtavakra, the sage, and says, "Oh, my master, please show me the way. Please show me the way of truth. I surrender to you." And then thus begins the whole dialogue between these two characters in which they discuss the nature of reality and truth. And that's called the Ashtavakra Gita. I highly recommend it. Because it's a contemplation on the nature of who you are. So the bodies here are here, right? Bodies are here. The mind is thinking, listening. Senses are here. But are you here? If you're not the body and you're not the mind, what's left? And where are you? So the great delusion of the human race, the big joke, the big problem, is that consciousness identifies itself with these characters and believes that it's here. Believes in this identity, which is not you. And so when you come to a gathering like this, you start to lose your identity. You start to clear out everything that's pointing back to the person that says, "This is me." And when those self-referencing thoughts disappear, then you as the person disappear, and then you can't find yourself, which is what we started out with in the first place. And that's the point. So you came here to dissolve. Maybe you didn't think of that when you read the invitation. You just thought, "Oh, love and butterflies." But this is hard hitting, like karate. Very hard hitting. You know? You get nailed. In other words, you get called out on your stuff. It's a euphemism, stuff. Of, you know, hardly anyone wants to come to a gathering like this because everyone wants to maintain their identity. No one wants to lose their patterns and habits and thinking ruts and things like that. Everyone wants to maintain the personhood. And here I am saying, no, you need to dissolve yourself. And that's why so few people come to these gatherings, because it's so hard to face your ego. So difficult. Because we're so programmed to be a certain way, trapped in that way of being. How you sit, how you look, how you dress, how you think, all of that has to go. Not that you need to just take off your clothes and throw them to the wind and say, "Okay, I'm free." It's not like that. But I mean, you start to unravel your person. And then, so you ever heard the term moksha? Moksha means liberation. It's a liberation from the stranglehold of your ego that has trapped you into a certain way of being. When you free yourself from that, then in a way, you're a spontaneous being now. Right? You're no longer bound by the subconscious and unconscious patternings that are ruling you. Most everything about you and how you act comes from your subconscious and unconscious mind. So you can't even see what those things are. Only about 1% of your whole mind is in the conscious. Did you know that? 1%. I mean, that means the majority of what's running you is underneath the surface that you can't even see. So then you need like some sort of deeper cleansing agent to pierce through you and start to clear the stuff that you can't see. So we invoke here a certain kind of vibration that sort of goes deep into your consciousness and starts to clear the underlying belief systems and feelings of who you are. So you can experience more freedom or moksha, more spontaneity, not so trapped in a certain way of being. So that's satsang in a nutshell. These kind of gatherings have been held for ages, eons. And mostly, if you want to go to a great satsang, you go to the Himalayas, where the sage sits underneath a tree and you go to find the sage. So it may take you days to go find that sage, and then you sit with him, and then he or she talks to you about the nature of truth. And all you do is sit and imbibe the energy. Just sit and open to the energy and let it percolate through you. And then you become dissolved in that process. That's satsang. Sat means truth. Sang means gathering. So you gather in truth to attune to something that is transcendental, beyond this character, this entity, to something that, think about this. What is the intelligence or force that runs all of these characters? Did you ever think of that? Once I went to a party and I started talking about this to some guy. And he goes, dude, man, why are you going so deep? This is a party. I said, oh, sorry, I forgot. See, you guys immediately come in and you're like, what is he saying? Like, this is pretty sharp. But it's true, because it's a kind of rare conversation. If you look at all the conversations of the world, we all get together and have tea and talk about, gossip about the weather or other people. It's just what we do. How many people come into a gathering and say, you know what, let's talk about how we actually don't exist? Does anyone have that conversation? But that would be a satsang if you did that with your friends. That would be a satsang, where the intent is for two spiritual seekers to come together and help each other to break out of their conditioning. That's a satsang. Right? That doesn't happen very often. So then we come to these gatherings to really immerse ourselves. And so I want to explain it. A presence is created in this container that is constantly saying to your subconscious and unconscious mind, you don't exist, you don't exist, you don't exist, you don't exist. It's a vibration, it's an energy, it's a message that keeps getting repeated to the deeper part of your being. And that part is like listening, and it's letting go bit by bit, letting go, letting go. Especially depending on how open you are. If you're thinking to yourself, let me out of here. I don't know if the door's locked, but I think it's open. You can still go out if you want. You can, and I wouldn't be offended at all, really. But I mean, that's the thing. Is it's very, very confronting to be in satsang. Now, sometimes I won't talk about this subject at all. Like the last one at was it Primordial Sound, or what was it called?
Profound sound.
Profound Sound. It was a gathering that we had in
St. Anne's Chapel.
Which is in Tarboro. You know what Tarboro is? Tarboro is so far out there, it's like the country. I mean, it's really a different world. So we went there, and I was all talking about peace and love, and we were a bunch of hippies, Yeah, we're cool, like that. So that was a totally different topic of singing about love. Here it's about cutting to the core of your sense of self, which is a path that few people take. You know why there are so few Buddhas in the world? Because people are not talking about this subject. Buddha is a very interesting story about Buddha. So Buddha used to be a prince. I don't know, maybe it was 400 BC or something like that. 400 BC, the Buddha. And he was a prince, and he ended up renouncing and going off, and then ended up becoming enlightened underneath the Bodhi tree, and then he was walking around and holding gatherings just like this, talking about truth. And so he came to this one town where he sat down underneath the tree, and a bunch of people from the town came to hear him because he was magnetizing. He was glowing. People were really like, wow, this is amazing. We want to just hear what he had. So all these people started gathering together, and this one man who was like the main spiritual teacher of that town got really upset because he had heard that the Buddha was in town, and some of his students were going to see the man, going to see Buddha. So he goes over, and in the middle of the Buddha's talk, he interrupts and faces the Buddha and says, "How dare you come into this town, take away my students?" How dare you? And gave him a 30-minute tirade, yelling at him in front of all these people. And the Buddha just sat there and listened for 30 minutes straight, totally calm and at peace, nodding, just like that. A tirade of yelling at him. Can you imagine? And after 30 minutes, the man looked at him and says, "Why don't you react? Say something." And the Buddha said, well, so the way I look at it is you're giving me a gift. But you see, I'm not receiving your gift. And since I'm not receiving your gift, where does the gift remain? With the giver. So the man was, of course, stunned, and I think he actually later became the disciple because he was so stunned by that comment. Because if someone was yelling at you and screaming at you, you'd probably feel pretty agitated. But the Buddha's like space. Why? Because there's no one there. That's the difference between a normal person or human being and an enlightened being. With an enlightened being, they're like space where insults can't hang anywhere. There's no place in you where an insult, because if you say, you're this, you're this, you're this, where's the you? Where do the insults hang? Could you imagine if you were in that state? Just give you an idea, right? Someone just starts railing on you. But you're space. So the person's words are going straight through, and there's nothing, you're like a Teflon pan. There's no place to stick. So you'd be invincible towards anyone who decided to attack you verbally. And physically as well, because you don't identify with your body either. The body's not you, the mind's not you. Right? So someone could be bashing the body. So, I am this. This is, one could say, this is within me. The whole universe is within me. I'm not confined to this body. Therefore, you could beat and burn the body, and you could attack the mind as much as you want, but there's no one there to attack. And so you could say that a true Buddha is greater than all the emperors of the world, all the presidents of the world. Why? Because those presidents and emperors are still worrying. They can have all the power in the world, but they're still worrying about something. Therefore, they're weak. The Buddha is invincible. untouched by the world. That's when, the Last Supper with Christ, how, some of the people were worried about, oh, Christ is going to die. He kept saying, I'm going to die and rise again. And so he said, don't worry about me. I have overcome the world. This is what I'm talking about right now. It's about you overcoming the world. So you're untouched by the pain and suffering that is occurring. As it's an ocean of pain and suffering on this world. Don't you think? Just turn on the news. Look at your own daily life and how much suffering you go through. In terms of worries and fears and sorrows and all the reactions day after day. And then consider that it's not just this lifetime, but then you take on a body in the next lifetime and you go through the same thing. You know why you take on a body? Because there's still a belief in the consciousness of I am a body. Because you haven't worked out that identity yet. You haven't dissolved that identity. So if you feel I am in the body or I am a body, then that consciousness carries on along with your soul. Then you get, of course, incarnated into another body because that's your belief system. Makes a lot of sense. God was not an idiot when he created this whole thing. He said, you choose. You want to be a body? Okay, great. Keep incarnated. So all of us have been through millions of lifetimes, millions of bodies, pretty much doing the same thing. Eating, sleeping, sex, and fear. That's it. 4 things. Lifetime after lifetime. But see, I've said this before, animals do that. We have an intellect that can go beyond animals. So the question is which humans are going to be able to go beyond animal consciousness? It's interesting. Not a lot on Earth. Most people have not gone beyond the animal stage, at least with humans. So once you can overcome fear of not having enough money, fear of not having enough food, fear of dying, all those things, then you're starting to get out of normal animal consciousness, which is afraid of those things. Buddha has no fear of dying. He's not in there. He's not in there. So you can invoke the energy of the Buddha. There's a very famous mantra, Buddham Saranam Gacchami. Maybe you've heard it before. One of the most famous Buddhist mantras. Buddham Saranam Gacchami. I take refuge in the Buddha. When you invoke him through the mantra, you bring that consciousness into the room, into the space. And when you tune to it, when you tune your consciousness, it's like a tuning fork. You ever seen a tuning fork? How if it gets near another tuning fork, it'll start to vibrate the same frequency? Same idea. If you invoke a particular kind of consciousness, what do you think happens to the people around you? They get affected by that vibration, that consciousness. So that's why people would want to hang out with the Buddha so that they could become like him. Fearless, unstoppable, like a lion. So Buddham Saranam Gacchami, and you can chant it with me. As you chant it, all you have to do is set your intention to feel the mantra, feel the underlying sense of it. Not just, oh, it's a nice song and it has a nice vibration to it. It's beyond the vibration of the music itself. People have the mistake of thinking, oh, it's the sound wave or something like that. No, it's not that. It's a spiritual consciousness that is a transmission. And just the simple intention of attuning, you could say, I want to attune my consciousness to the consciousness of the mantra. Say that to yourself in your mind. I want to attune my consciousness to the consciousness of the mantra. Buddham Saranam Gacchami. and then it clicks you in. You see what I mean? It clicks you into that frequency. And then when you chant it, you're going deeper. You're starting to understand the essence of the mantra, not just the intellectual meaning of it. And you can sing with me as you get it. It's pretty easy. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam, Buddham saranam, Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam, Buddham saranam, Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam, Buddham saranam, Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam, Buddham saranam, Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam, Buddham saranam, Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam gacchami. Buddham saranam So then, to allow the mantra to go deeper, I'm going to take in 11 deep breaths, in and out through the nose, breathing the light of that mantra into your heart space, your heart center. So 11 deep breaths, and each time you breathe, try to imagine that the light here of that mantra, the Buddha, is growing brighter. We can inhale and release. One more deep breath. And then you've probably seen a picture of the Buddha, or you have seen a statue. But any vision that you have of the Buddha, imagine that he's alive here in your heart and illuminated and in meditation. Try to visualize that as clearly as you can. He's just radiating his energy there in the heart. The more you can really visualize it and focus there, the more you'll be able to invoke the energy in the heart. imagine that he's now levitating or floating up, straight up and into your throat. And now he's illuminating your throat center, meditating there. Just feel him meditating there in the throat. Notice the energy. Getting brighter and brighter there. And then imagine that he's then floating up into your third eye, between the eyebrows. Now he's meditating there, in that energy center. Just imagine the Buddha as clearly as you can in the third eye center. He's glowing there, now bright, beautiful, radiant in the third eye. And then visualize him moving up to the crown, the top of your head. And he's sitting on the top of your head in meditation, glowing there on the crown energy center. go of the image and just relax into the meditative state. Just very gently coming back to the sensation of your seat, your body. And then we can open our eyes. So that's how you attune to the Buddha. You could know all the facts about the Buddha, all the stories, but it's just information. If you don't become the Buddha, what's the point? For entertainment purposes, I guess. Well, what's really the point? So, my name is Brian. I forgot to introduce myself. And you could say, I'm a wandering monk. Could say that. Kind of visiting here from living, at least temporarily, in Los Angeles. And in 2012, I had been running a financial planning company, and I had went to go meet my spiritual master. This is Swami Purna. Lit a little candle there for him. And I had a 3-minute talk with him in which he asked me to renounce my old life, pretty much everything I had, and set off on the road and share these gatherings with other people. That was in 2012. So after that short conversation, I did so. I went home and pretty much got rid of everything. Sold my car, and I bought a van who I named Persistence. Persistence, interesting enough, broke down 11 times before she finally got out of Austin. And then I traveled for 3 years across the United States and Canada, holding thousands of gatherings. I don't even know how many. All over different yoga studios. This may be the first karate studio or academy I've done. Maybe once before, I don't remember, maybe. And so the mission, in a sense, the mission is to simply share the energy with others, to help them kind of shift their consciousness into another dimension. So the real teachings here, the real teaching is invisible. That's the real teaching. The energy, the presence, the essence. So hopefully you're able to tap into that. If not, it's okay, Talk, this is a nice talk, nice breathing exercises, you can enjoy that still. But the reason why people come back is because they can really feel something profound and deep. That's what I'm sharing. And that is a more rare thing to find. It's an uncommon thing. But it's extraordinary. I was a saint chaser. So I would travel all over to go be and sit in the presence of saints. And then, of course, I met Swami Purna in 2008. And then what happened was, before he even came into the room, I sensed his presence. I felt it, and I was crying. I had tears in my eyes. And I knew this would be the teacher who would help me to free this person from the binding of the mind, the binding of the world, the binding of birth and death and birth and death and birth and death, right? The freedom, that's what I mentioned at the beginning, moksha. Moksha is the freedom from the birth and death cycle. It is the most important quest of a human's life. It's why we came here. Most people don't remember that, but it will dawn for someone at some point where, after we've tried sort of all the pleasures of the world and enjoyed everything, then we kind of come back, okay, now that I've done all that, what's the point? Why did I come to earth in the first place? Is it just to enjoy pleasures? Everyone does that. So then you ask the question, what's next? And then you get attracted to great yogis who have achieved amazing states of consciousness. And then you start to develop your own spiritual evolution. And you head on your path to freedom. In a way, I'd say kind of the sad thing is that some people don't even know that this path exists. That's kind of amazing. Although Buddha and Christ are like the most popular figures in history, and yet still people are not getting the point. That those beings were sending out a transmission to free people's minds from their own suffering. Because if people really got it, everyone would be coming to satsang, to strive to find that, the essence of their being. Everyone would be coming to this gathering to seek that, or whatever, any gathering where there's a legitimate transmission of truth. That's a key thing. Not just talk about it, but a real live presence where you come in and it's just like, wow, this is amazing. Out of this world. That's what I'm talking about. And so the path of evolution, you keep becoming more and more refined, softer, soften your mind, soften your being, until poof, you're gone. And then you're done. That's it. It sounds simple. But it's not so simple because of the, as I said at the beginning, the holding on to the identity. So, to me, this is a fascinating process. You know why? People who know me, right? People who know, I'm always curious about Brian's reactions every single day. What was that judgment about? Brian was judging that person. Why was that? And how can I soften that judgment? Or how can I unravel it and see how it's actually not true? So then I go through this sort of self-reflection process of trying to unravel Brian's judgments and ideas of who he thinks people are, or for that matter, who he thinks he is. Every single day, I'm striving to do that. Every day, I'm watching my reactions, whether they're fears or angers or sadness, and I'm working with the subtleties of those emotions and those feelings, and I'm, again, trying to soften, loosen them, dissolve them. And bit by bit, Brian is falling apart. Do you see what I mean? That's what I'm doing. I have a journal where it's called like a releasing journal, where at the end of the day I'll sit down and I'll write down with an intention to release all the feelings and emotions. I'll give you an example. If I tune in right now to Brian and what's there. Kind of some stress here, disappointment, discombobulation, sadness, depression, hopelessness, disappointment. You see? And each time I say the word, it's a release of that energy. It's a release. And that energy gets dissolved. It just kind of, because the moment you see into a particular feeling that you have, once you really see through it, it goes. Most of the time, a lot of our emotions and deeper stuff is underneath the surface, so we can't even name it. We can't even really know. People don't have a lot of training in self-reflection and finding out what they're really feeling. Even I'll go through a process with a group of people, and I'll say, okay, let everyone tune in. What are they feeling right now? Okay, everyone say out loud what they're feeling. And I hear like crickets. Because no one wants to say aloud and be honest about what they're feeling. Because it's not an easy process. Who wants to be that vulnerable? But you have to be. If you want to disassemble yourself, you have to. To really release your ego, you have to be able to see through it to the depths of your being. And since most of it's hidden, a lot of times what you can do is you can chant the mantra and then notice what comes up, because the mantra will dig. It's an energy that digs into your subconscious and unconscious mind and pushes out the issues so you can see them. Otherwise, how are you ever going to see the deeper parts of yourself that are hidden? How are you ever going to clear out what you can't see? So the mantra is like a digging tool, and you're self-exploring and clearing bit by bit. So I have this journal, I'm writing out each one of the things with an intention to release. And boom, one thing after another. And after the clearing, I feel fantastic. Even after just stating some of the things I just stated, I already feel way better. You know? So it really works. But do you know, when you go to school, let's say kindergarten or first grade, do they give you those tools? Anyone got those tools? Did anyone have a class in kindergarten called self-reflection? No. Self-analysis? No one had that class? Right? That's a rare thing. You have to have a very progressive school to be able to, to help the kids. Because what happens is, what do you think happens? Since we don't have any of those classes in our younger grades, in our younger school, what do? All the problems and issues that we have build up, and we start to get a bigger and bigger ego. More and more problems, more and more insecurities, because we haven't worked on the clearing. So we build this strong wall around our heart, and we lose our freedom because we create our character, our personality that way. And then think that that's normal. Think that's normal, but it's not. Well, you know what? Can you guess what my biggest issue as a kid was? Still is, by the way, insecurity. I was very shy. I'd be talking to you, looking at your feet. They couldn't even look you in the eye. Insecurity, right? Can't even engage people in the eye. Yeah, that was really tough as a kid. I look back, I'm like, how did I do it? Man, it's such an insecure kid. And I don't know if my parents knew it, and I didn't really understand. I just thought, I'm just shy. They say shy is normal. No, it's not. It's insecurity. You can be totally confident and talk and be free to express yourself. You don't have to have shyness. So, it's taken me a long time to work out a lot of that, so at least I can talk to you without being embarrassed. At least I can do that. Yeah, that's an improvement. And so, but the deeper and deeper insecurities and fears of what will the person think of me, what I'm afraid. I'll tell you one that I have, afraid of type A personalities. Type A personality is a person who's really strong personality who will likely tell you what to do. I have a lot easier with people who are more gentle, like a lamb or something, like lamb-like. Well, when you come across a person who's really type A, strong, telling me, I get timid, right? I start to shrink. So my test is to stand up and actually be able to speak my truth with a person who has a really strong personality like that. That's my test. And be able to not just stand strong and say, I'm going to steel myself, but to be able to also be very calm and be okay with a person being strict with me or mean with me or tough with me or, I'm going to get you in line, Brian. Okay, sure. What do you want to do? Instead of being cowering, not cowering even just physically, but inside being afraid of them. It's like the little kid, and I'll tell you where that comes from. It comes from my mother. My mother was, she was very strong in what she wanted me to do, and I interpreted that as I'm afraid, and I don't want to get into trouble. So I'm not going to speak up and tell her that I'm hurt, my feelings were hurt, or that I'm afraid because she's scolding me or something like that. I just gained a complex. Because what do you know as a kid? Do you know anything? You don't have the tools to be able to work with that. So now I'm trying to work with the little kid Brian who was so afraid, and to try to bring him some confidence and opening again so he can be himself. Isn't that a noble goal? Isn't that worthwhile? I'd rather be around people where I could really just be myself and not so afraid. That would be awesome. Then it doesn't matter what personality, I could be your friend. It doesn't matter. Or I could stand up to injustice or whatever it is with confidence. Maybe I should have taken karate. Some sort of martial art. The greatest martial artists are the enlightened ones, the illumined ones. You know why? Because they're in the flow. So before you even think your move, the person's already, you ever seen Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon? It's like that, Before you even think your move, they're already moving out of the way. I mean, it's like they're in such a flow that they know exactly what's going to happen before you even make your move. So you can't win against the illumined being because they're so in tune with the universe. It's like their mind is dissolved. So they're no longer acting out of human reaction. They're being guided by a cosmic force that's running their body. So this is why so many miracles can happen out of the enlightened martial artist. I wish I had known martial arts back when the bullies picked on me. That would have helped a lot. My confidence, and I would have fought back. So we'll do like one more group mantra together, singing together. You remember how the Buddha went up to your third eye? The third eye consciousness. That's your intuition. That's your inner knowing. You know how like when you just know something is right, you don't have to think about it? That's your third eye awakening. It's helpful because it stops the debate in the mind about what you should do or what you shouldn't do, because you know. So you can chant for the third eye. There's a mantra specifically to awaken the third eye. Soham hamsa. Soham means I am that, and hamsa means swan. So swan, that's a much deeper symbol. I won't go into it, but we'll chant Soham hamsa together. And you can chant with me as you get it. And the idea is to direct the mantra towards this third eye between the eyebrows to awaken that energy center so you can feel that consciousness there. Feel the opening. And you'll know because it's kind of like a transcendental state, a state of beyond. It's a deeper meditation. So we'll sing it together. Soham hamsa, Soham hamsa, Soham hamsa, Soham. Then you try it. Soham hamsa, Soham hamsa, Soham hamsa, Soham. 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 With your eyes closed, you can actually look up towards your third eye, so slightly making that movement or gesture with your eyes up towards the center between the eyebrows. When you hold this, this begins to activate that energy center and that state of consciousness. You could call it a spiritual state of consciousness. You could imagine there a candle flame glowing between your eyebrows. As you look up towards that candle flame. Then relaxing the eyes. We set our intention to tune in to the third eye consciousness, to the energy there. Gently coming back to your seat, feeling your seat. We can open our eyes. So, before I conclude, I wanted to ask if anyone had any questions for me, or any feedback, or anything that they wanted to share in terms of their experience. be like what?
Rumination
Ah, yeah, yeah.
versus releasing.
Right, right.
Yeah. It's just a matter of practicing recognition of impermanence or
Ah, it's a matter of intention. Yeah, intention is so crucial. Like if you have a journal where you kind of set your intention over the journal, even like pray over it, just say, let this be my release journal. So anything I write, I'm letting it go. Anything. It's released through the pen, into the journal, done, gone. So that intention, and then when you sit and write, because your intention is so strong, the stuff goes naturally. On the other hand, you could have your intention to ruminate, in which case then that would be a whole different process. So the intention is the most important. But you're right, a lot of people do ruminate about these things. But yes, and in regards to the idea of impermanence, what a great thought. So the Buddha taught that everything that you experience is impermanent. All your thoughts, all your sensations, your senses, your mind, emotions, everything is comes and it goes. In other words, the feelings that I have today are going to be different than tomorrow. This body is going to be different tomorrow. A lot of the cells are going to be totally different. Everything is changing constantly, so nothing stays the same. So you know that these thoughts come and go and that they're technically not real because they don't stay as a permanent thing. So when you do your release journal, you kind of have that as a background thing. I know that all of these emotions and thoughts and feelings come and go. They're not actually real. And then you can sit down and write. Does that help?
very helpful.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments?
I have a comment.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for being here. When will you be back? Is a question. And I think this is really needed in our community more often. It is sitting together and, like you say, you go to the party and you go real deep into that. Not a lot of people do that. I wish there was more gatherings like that. Because it's in these times we need to talk truth. We need to stop being so superficial, and just be real with each other. Because the way the world is going, me chanting, it's been a while since I've chanted. And you talk about all those words you said in this moment. And in that moment, I felt shame for myself because I hadn't chanted. And then I had to let it go. Because sitting here and chanting is a reminder of my truth. And so I want to say thank you for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Reminder is a really great word. So most conversations are about reaffirming our egos. You're there and I'm here. We're separate. That's an ego. Separation consciousness. So pretty much 99.999% of conversations are reaffirming separateness and therefore moving away from the higher truth. So how do we reverse that trend if the whole world is going in that direction? And that's like the collective consciousness where everyone's concerned more about reaffirming their individuality rather than merging. So the suggestion would be to work on this every day, to do a little bit each day. You may have 90% of the day focusing on separation of me and the other person and superficial talk, but maybe 1 hour during the day you really focus on truth and the deeper topics, and that can help to stop your own trend of thinking in terms of a self-centered person. And at some point, it'll increase naturally. Like, as an example, as I'm looking at you, I'm kind of feeling this sort of energy of merging or sameness. And so I carry that. So my daily life is experiencing that, not just 1 hour of contemplating about how we're all one. But the energy has gotten so strong that my direct experience can't even forget it. So it's always contemplating about the nature of, oh, this is all just the one being. There's only one. So when your direct experience is reaffirming it, then there's no question. And then it's almost like you're on automatic pilot. But until then, it really requires that you sit down and have a regular practice of working on yourself. Making an effort. Now, it may be hard for you to do it by yourself. That's why normally I stream these live from LA, not from here. But I stream them live. So 3 evenings a week. It'd be 10 o'clock your time, so it'd be kind of late. But for an hour and a half, you can imagine. I was doing this all through COVID, streaming, right? I've been doing that for years and years and years. And each gathering is different. Like, this is totally different than the last one that we did. Totally different. Each subject is different. Each, whether it's developing a particular virtue, or it's an exploration of the deeper self, or it's peace, or it's love, or it's joy, whatever it is. But even if you can't go in person, because oftentimes, with COVID nowadays, it's like harder to go to in-person things. You can perhaps tune in online or watch a recording or something like that. And just, because the energy comes through the internet. Energy comes, and you really have to, again, set your intention to tune into the transmission of the online gathering, and then just feel it. And that's a really, really helpful way to keep, because it's about keeping the momentum going, the energy going. And then hopefully you might have a friend, maybe you brought your friend here today or something, where you can have those kind of conversations and discuss, like, say, the topics of the gathering, instead of going home and talking about how I'm going to have this for breakfast tomorrow. You say, oh, it's interesting. He was talking about truth. What is truth? What do you feel truth is? And you have that conversation with your friend. That's a whole different thing. One is mundane human consciousness, and one is a conversation that uplifts your consciousness into a higher realm, a higher reality that's beyond your human. If most of your time is spent in mundane human consciousness in those kind of conversations, what do you think you're going to be? You're just going to be human. You're going to stay that way, and you're going to die human and get into the next human body or whatever body. Continue on. So ultimately, your whole life has to be directed to divinity. Your whole life must be pointing towards how there is only one. Everything you must see and smell everything as just the one. And that requires an enormous amount of practice. Enormous, tremendous, where it almost has to become an obsession, where it's the only thing you want to find out in your life is how indeed there is only one, no other. I'm not separate from the one. I am. If that becomes your obsession, you will very quickly evolve. So I could go on about, because you're a comment, but I'll conclude. So I'll conclude, and these are the final mantras. With these ones, you can just kind of relax into them and just let them wash over you. They honor my teacher Swami Purna, and also they honor the guru within you. They help to awaken the guru within you. Guru simply means from darkness to light, releasing your ignorance, the mind's ignorance that believes it's separate. That's ignorance. Yeah. From darkness to light, guru. Ru means light, goo. It's like you're stuck in the goo, like the darkness. You're trying to find the light to release yourself from the suffering of this world. Get out. Our hands in prayer position in front of our heart. We'll chant together the mantra Om Shanti Shanti Shanti, sending a wave of peace to all beings in this world. Be unto all.